I knew her. In all of my years of work, I've developed a strange relationship with death. I see it as something purely physical. The body in front of me is just an organism who's stopped living. That's all that it is. And yet, it took me by surprise to have her on my table. I had seen her around the hospital before. Excited, glowing, talking about what her life would look like from now on. She was a bit distracted sometimes, saying that great things were coming. But I didn't expect her to die right before giving birth. She was found drowned in her own home, with writings on her wrists and on the back of her neck. And she'd been laying in her bathtub for days before her neighbor found her. She had no husband, no relatives. They expected me to rule it as a suicide. I didn't believe that, since it made no sense. Why would she kill herself right before giving birth? Right before becoming a mother, a thing that she had been so excited about? I'd been called in the middle of the night to work on her. They said her body was already in a pretty fragile state, and I need to be precise and fast before they could wrap this tragedy up. I won't weigh you down with all of the gore details. I'll just go over the process really fast, that way you'll get an idea of what I do. First comes some of the paperwork and the observations, along with the external examination and photographs. I didn't notice anything beside the obvious signs of drowning and damage done by the 3 days spent in the bathtub. Although, if I'm being honest, but that might just be me, I thought the skin surrounding the writing, wrists, the neck, was lighter than the rest and harder. Next came the internal examination. I'd been plagued by a wave of sadness, not wanting to move on with the procedure, but I tensed up and kept on working. Again, the usual signs of drowning. I froze with the instrument in my hand. I was the only one in the morgue, or at least the only one alive. And it might have been the lack of sleep or the general eerie atmosphere that was making me feel unsure of what I was seeing. There was no earthly way that she could have made those carvings on her ribs. Tiny carvings of the same symbols. My throat was dry, which made me feel like I was choking on air. And suddenly the collar of my scrub felt too tight for me. It wasn't my imagination. Her ribs were covered in these carvings. Could it be some bone-eating bacteria? I knew it was pointless to even ask that question because I knew that it wasn't. I took out my phone to take a close-up of the ribs. I know that wasn't too professional, but I had no other choice. The moment that I took the picture, something clattered in the distance. I looked up to the door to the hallway. No one should be here. I took a sharp breath and carefully put my gloves back on, feeling the blood slowly drain from my face as I worked my way down to her amniotic sac. I was expected to see something that would make my skin crawl, and I knew that no matter how hard I braced myself, it would still hit me hard. And when I opened it up, it was empty. There was no sign of a fetus. It was as if it had just disappeared, leaving her placenta and the umbilical cord behind intact. There was no baby there. I stepped back from her and I took off my gloves. I rubbed my eyes. That had to be impossible. Her tummy had been perfectly round, and I'm pretty sure that there would have been signs if she had given birth before or after dying. It was inhuman, unnatural. Everything indicating a pregnancy existed, all except for the baby. I carefully closed her up, trying not to think about the missing baby and the symbols, then filed the report. And I wrote suicide on it. I wasn't 100% sure on that. I didn't need to be. They'd been clear with the instructions. Just get it done. Fast. I creaked the door open and peered into the hallway. The clattering had come from the supply room, and I hadn't heard the door open or close. So what had done it was still there. I approached it slowly, holding my breath, as if I were afraid to make a sound. I placed my hand on the doorknob and twisted. It was locked. On the inside. And I knocked. "Hey," I whispered. "Is anyone there?" What followed was an unusual sound, something like someone sucking the air through their teeth. I looked back to the hallway, ending with the morgue. The door was swinging open. I couldn't remember if I had closed it or not, and I didn't want to. I decided that my job was finished there. I closed up and I got into my car, and then I drove home in silence. I live alone, so me coming home at 3 a.m. would not disturb anyone. And after doing my nighttime routine and going to bed, I found myself twisting and turning, strange dreams pressing onto me, like the ones that you have when you have a fever. I thought that I heard a cry at one point, till I realized that it had been my own. I opened my eyes after what seemed like minutes, to discover that it was a little over 6 a.m. And in the soft glow of the morning, my window had fogged up a bit, and I couldn't help but stare, perplexed at the flesh print of a child's hand on the inside of the window. There's just something about the darkness that deepens the horror of seeing a fresh print of a child's hand on your window. During the day, it is disturbing. During the night, it makes your stomach turn. Especially when you live alone. Especially after having done an autopsy on a pregnant woman whose baby was never found. Especially when the print is on the inside of the glass. I'd seen the print that morning, yet refused to acknowledge it until late at night. I figured that I was just tired or disturbed by the previous events. And my mind was playing tricks on me. I figured that I was just tired or disturbed by the previous events and that my mind was playing tricks on me. However, after getting out of the shower and seeing the fogged up mirror, I gently pressed my hand onto it and stared at the print, and then compared it to the one in the bedroom. And it was a child's hand. Could it be related to the baby that I couldn't find? I know that seems ridiculous, and yet a lot of ridiculous things had happened in the past 24 hours. One thing is certain. I was not sleeping that night. I remembered the picture that I had taken of the symbols carved onto her ribs, and I pulled out my phone. I opened the photo, and there they were. The bone displayed a continuous line of writing, some letters repeating symbols so intricate that they resembled hieroglyphs. The details were so tiny that it seemed impossible for anyone to carve them there. It looked like the bone had eroded itself to form them. I debated using Google reverse image search to match the symbols since I couldn't identify their language or purpose. However, a more rational approach made me realize that I can't just upload a picture with the insides of a woman onto Google servers. I decided to trace them on a paper and reverse image search that picture. I sat at my kitchen table and I tensed up as I copied, as accurately as I could, the strange writing. I had a sense that it had something to do with a cult or a ritual, but I still wanted to know what I was dealing with. The first symbol resembled an open hand, missing its ring finger. I did my best to draw it and then moved it to some sort of swirls around a triangle. But then, I'd done 2 out of the dozens of symbols and my hand felt numb. My back was starting to hurt from crouching on the table. I was compelled to finish, so that way I could just move on and break the awful silence that had found its way into the rest of my apartment. From my position, I could see the child's handprint on my window. That and placed an unmovable knot in my stomach. The third symbol had a tongue, I think. I wasn't sure. My shoulders were tensed up and my neck felt unbelievably stiff. It was as if someone was pressing onto me. So I decided to take a break, and I lifted my gaze to my reflection in the window, just in time to see a woman behind me with both of her hands placed on my shoulders and an unusually long neck twisting over my head to look at what I was writing. You like to think that you know yourself. You believe that you'd react a certain way in a situation. But unless you actually go through it, you can never truly know. There are 3 types of responses to this absolutely ghastly, disgusting appearance: fight, flight, or freeze. Apparently, I am the type of person who freezes. I looked up and made eye contact with her. Her eyes were similar to one of those paintings that claims to trap one's soul inside. And her face was unbelievably human and yet missing something. She didn't smile, cry, or yell. She just stared at me, and then lifted a hand with absolutely no lines or skin folds, a completely smooth hand, and placed one of her completely smooth fingers on the paper, on the symbols. I think that she wanted to keep writing. By that point, my heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt incredibly lightheaded. The room began to tremble and then blur, and I think I passed out. I woke up, and I was alone. I think. I can see in the hallway, right where the light from the kitchen met the shadows, something like a standing coat or I don't know. My breath still stops when I think about it. It's hard to recall. I looked back down at the symbols and I decided that I would stop searching for this thing alone. My front door was at the end of the hallway, and something tells me that if I had passed that thing, I wouldn't be alive today. I did the only logical thing and jumped out the window, then got into my car and called a friend. As I was waiting for him to pick up, the woman appeared in my window and tilted her head. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. And then she disappeared into my home. It was her, the woman that I'd done the autopsy on, the pregnant woman. She was in my house.
Yeah, you okay? It's late, man.
My friend Tom mumbled on the other side of the line. How can I talk to someone who knows cults?
What?
I did an autopsy on a pregnant woman whose baby is missing, and now she is in my house, and she had these symbols on her, and I don't know.
What?
Did you hear a thing I fucking said? I'm being fucking haunted, or hunted, or both. And I looked up to see the woman standing in my doorway. Fuck.
Wes, are you on acid? Because, you promised me that if you ever tried, that we would do it together.
I started the engine and I looked up to see the woman standing closer to my car. Her hospital gown was drenched in blood or mud or both. She bared all her teeth to me in an exaggeration of a smile, and my hand slipped from the steering wheel from the sweat. Work. Oh my God. God gracious. I yelled all the prayers I knew out loud as I was pulling onto the main street and driving away. I didn't care that the front door to my house had remained practically open. I'd forgotten that I was still on the phone with Tom.
Dude, stop yelling. Are you praying? What is going on? Are you alone?
I'm driving to your house right now.
Whoa, wait. Don't get in the car if you're on drugs, Wes.
I am not on drugs. I'll explain everything to you. Just wait for me, I declared, and then I hung up, trying to steer the car and stay in my lane. I think I was crying. And when I got there, he was already waiting for me at the door. And I explained everything to him, and he fell silent for a moment before yelling at me. "You are a horrible friend. You brought the shit to my house with the symbols and the fucking cult, and what were you thinking? Writing them down? Wes, you deliberately tried to summon her. Are you stupid?" "I'm sorry. From what you're telling me, she's part of it, and she wasn't dead when you opened her up." "Yeah, I figured that out already. Do you have the paper with you with the symbols?" No. Damn it. Great. About... let's Google it. I don't think that we're gonna find anything online. Not on Google, at least. He gave me a blank look. "No? What, the dark web, then? Is that why you called me?" "Yeah. I know that you used to shop there when you got pills and stuff." "Right. So you figured that I would be down to just search for some obscure fucking cult." "Yeah." And Tom sighed. I knew that he was mad, but part of him was still curious, and he couldn't resist it. And soon enough, we were crouched over his laptop. I don't even think that I know how to get through this anymore. It's been a while. I watched him turn on his VPN and whatever else, since I'm not good with technology, nor can I remember details. He went into a folder onto his computer and loaded a program and then a link or something like that. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid that the woman might have followed us. All right. What do I search? Can you reverse image search the rib picture? Honestly, I don't really want to. Might find gory stuff. Okay. Search autopsies, stuff like that. Cults. And we unfortunately got jump scared by some obscure forums, and we're beginning to lose hope. Till Tom came across a user's story. This one describes symbols such as a flaming triangle, a hand with a missing ring finger, a nail. He says that the letters are strangely human, that his aunt used them when she was part of the society. He claims to be from Alaska. We began reading through his logs. All right. For privacy reasons, you can call me Keith. Yes, I mean the most batshit insane ritual I have seen, and believe me, I have seen a lot. They are tied to the Maraca Rhea, or worshippers of the dead mother. They originated from some very avid idolizers of the Virgin Mary and developed the ideology that the Antichrist, or whatever it was going to be born after the death of the mother. He had to be born in death, from death. It's like a whole process spanning over years. Some other user had asked, so like every woman part of the cult wants to birth the Antichrist? Oh no. They do all kinds of satanic rituals and whatnot. From time to time, more avid followers think that they can just achieve eternal life by trying to birth the Antichrist, but it's rare and very manic. They get pregnant and then they get on this weird diet and perform weird symbols alone. Their body goes through those transformations and eventually they kill themselves and wait to be resuscitated by their sons. LOL. Does that even happen? Rare as fuck, in my opinion. Never heard one case, but yeah, it can happen. It'd be tragic though. I mean, even if their kid would turn out alive, its soul would probably be sold to Satan or something, and the mother would turn up some half-dead witch. That scared the shit out of me, LMAO. I'm tempted to write some symbols and check whether this is true or bullshit. Don't write anything. Don't read anything out loud. Don't do any of that. They're clingy as fuck. My aunt could not get rid of them. What if I already did? Just wait it out. It'll pass. They can't hurt you unless you continue to acknowledge them. If they're after you, just give them what they want. And I stared at the text, dated over 7 years ago. They can't hurt you unless you continue to acknowledge them. They can't hurt you unless you continue to acknowledge them. They can't hurt you unless you continue to acknowledge them. How much would it count as continued acknowledgement? Did I really have to live my life in danger from now on, petrified to close my eyes? Had I done too much? Was it too much attention? The autopsy, the pictures, writing the symbols down, searching the web. I spent the night at Tom's. I had this semi-dead ex-pregnant woman on my tracks. Something told me that she wasn't the only one. If she had been so disturbed, I sure as hell don't want to meet her baby. All right. Let's not begin with castles in Transylvania. That's too romantic. It's too clean. No, let's start further back. Before doors, before locks, when shelter was nothing but firelight flickering against door floors, and a hole in the wall where the world crept in. That place, the threshold, it was sacred. A line drawn not with wood or stone, but with hope. On this side, warmth, safety, and family. And on the other, teeth in the dark. We feared that line. We prayed over it. The Romans honored their household spirits, whispering to the Laris and the begging Janus, the two-faced god of doorways and transitions, to keep the chaos out. In Japan, they still press Afuda to their frames like sealing wax on the soul. In Mesopotamia, they buried charms beneath the step, as if fear could be buried too. And all of it was a ritual. All of it was architecture, yes, but spiritual. A wall of belief, not brick. The threshold wasn't just where your house began. It was where you ended. And here's what makes the vampire different. It doesn't defy that boundary. It obeys it. And that's what makes it worse. Because if it waits for an invitation, then it's you who opens the door. Your ruin is your undoing. Not a sudden rush of claws or a wail of a ghost slipping through cracks. No. The vampire asks and waits. It lives on your voice, your trust, and your permission. And that changes everything, because now it is not just a monster. It is a mirror. Ancient people, they knew this, even if they didn't say it out loud. The Celts nailed iron horseshoes above their doors. Egyptians carved wards into stone lintels, and in Japan, even now, you step carefully over a threshold, never on it. Each ritual, every charm, are saying the same thing in different tongues. What's out there must stay out there. Unless you let it in. Even after the Christianization of Europe, the idea endured. Icons replaced runes and crosses replaced bones, but the fear remained. The door frames were still a border, a fragile dam between the living and the long dead. And vampires? They've always belonged to the latter. But not in the way that you'd think. They weren't cloaked noblemen in candlelit halls. Not at first. In Slavic tales, they were your brother, your aunt, the child who came home wrong. The villagers scattered rice or seeds by the door, not to trap and not to kill, but to simply delay. The Strigoi, cursed to count every grain before sunrise, would fall victim to their own compulsions. You see the same thing again in China, with the Genagashi, the stiff, hopping dead bound by riddles and rituals. And they weren't fought with blades. They were distracted. And we hoped that they would lose track of the night. Because force was never enough. We had to choose not to let them in. Do you understand what I'm saying? We tell ourselves that we're smarter now, and we have outgrown the fears of old. But we still do pause when the doorbell rings at night, still hesitate when an unknown number flashes on our phone. We feel it, even now, that primal chill beneath the skin. The world is brighter, sure, but the shadows haven't left. They've simply adapted. And so has the vampire. But this one thing, this law of invitation, it endures. Because it doesn't just touch fear. It digs deeper into the marrow of what we believe keeps us safe. That we're the ones who are in control. That our homes are ours and that evil stays out unless we say yes. But that is an illusion. Before we had doors, we had thresholds. Before we had death, we feared what would come back from it. And long before we knew what monsters were, we were already inviting them in. The vampire doesn't break rules. It waits for you to ask it inside. Vampires don't violate our homes. They violate our trust. Not in them, but in ourselves. There's something far more chilling about a monster that waits than one that attacks. Something almost elegant in its restraint. It doesn't need to shatter glass or batter down a door. It only needs to pause. Silent. Composed. Patient. And wait for you to say yes. That is the horror that no one talks about. Not the thing at your threshold, but the part of you that opens the door. We like to believe that our homes are our fortresses, 4 walls, a lock, a deadbolt, and we sleep like gods, untouchable. But that sense of safety, it isn't just made of wood and steel. It's something deeper. A sensation buried in our bones. Psychologists, they call this territorial cognition. It's why you can move through your bedroom blindfolded but feel like an intruder in someone else's kitchen. It's not about the space, it's simply about ownership, control. But then, someone knocks, and everything shifts. Inside us, 2 ancient instincts begin to wrestle. One tells us to reach out, and the other says to run. Researchers, they call this approach avoidance conflict. The war between connection and caution. It's old, older than language. And the vampire knows it better than we do. Because it doesn't need claws. It only needs ambiguity. We think that we'd recognize danger when it comes. We like to believe that we'd spot the red flags. But we don't. We're not built for that kind of clarity. We want to believe people are kind. We want to see them as good. And monsters, real monsters, they thrive on that. They don't have to hypnotize us. They just have to be charming and patient. If you've ever indulged in Salem's Lot, the scariest moment isn't the bite. It is the knock at the window, the whisper, and the child who lets it in. And that is the vampire's weapon. Consent. Not stolen, given. And that's what turns them into something worse than predators. Because when you open the door, it's not your home that they enter. It is your certainty, your sense of safety, your belief that you can spot evil when it smiles, that you can protect what matters. And that's what unravels. See, werewolves tear, ghosts they haunt, but vampires, they negotiate. They let you light the match that burns it all down. The brilliance of it. The cruelty. It's how it preserves the illusion of choice. You said yes. You welcomed it. But did you really? Most stories don't show that moment clearly. They don't need to. Because by the time the character realizes what they've done, it's already too late. They thought that they were being polite. They thought that they were in control. And then the threshold is behind them. And they never get it back. That's what stays with me. That quiet suggestion. In story after story that maybe we're not as good at recognizing danger as we want to believe. That monsters don't announce themselves. They ask you how your day was. They offer you a drink. They wear clean clothes and perfect teeth. And we simply smile back. We are surrounded by those moments now. A message from someone that you don't remember meeting. A friend request. A charming stranger who simply wants to talk. The vampire isn't stuck in folklore anymore. It's adapted. It's fluent in modern tongues. It moves like an algorithm now, not a shadow. But the rule hasn't changed. It still waits. It still asks. And we still answer. That's why vampire stories haven't faded. Because every time a character says yes, every time that they open the door, you feel it, don't you? That whisper, that question. Would I have done the same? But here's the thing. The vampire, those early ones, they didn't always know that. They weren't invaders. They were mourners. And that's what makes them unbearable. They don't come for conquest. They come because they think that this is still home. Because they think that you still love them. And that's the part that stays with me. Why else would they fixate on the door, the fire, the bed that used to be theirs? Because in grief, we beg for return. Death is too sudden and too wrong. The human mind doesn't know how to let go. We dream of impossible knocks, of familiar voices on the other side. Of maybe it's not over. Maybe it's them. Maybe they've come back. They were family. Wrong, twisted, familiar, but off. And then came 1897. Bram Stoker did something cruelly genius. He didn't invent the vampire. He refined it. Took centuries of gutter folklore, bodies coming back confused and hungry, and gave it etiquette. Gave it manners. Draped it in silk and silence and let it walk into Victorian drawing rooms without spilling a drop. He gave the monster restraint. He took the bloated, desperate Strigoi of the countryside and handed it a calling card, a castle as well as an accent. And then he did something even more terrifying. He didn't make the invitation rule a rumor anymore. He enshrined it. Dracula doesn't break in. He waits. Patient, cultured, polite. And that's not a contradiction. That's the horror. Because in a society obsessed with order, appearance, and social rules, manners are the perfect weapon. Victorian England was a world of lines, between rich and poor, man and woman, proper and improper, and none of them were guarded with violence. They were guarded with etiquette. Who belonged and who didn't? Who deserved a seat? Who was allowed through the door? And Dracula, he didn't ask for blood. He asked for respect. He arrived not as a beast, but as a guest. And refusing a guest, that was unthinkable. Hospitality wasn't just polite, it was sacred. In ancient Greece, the law of Xenia to welcome the stranger was enforced by the gods themselves. Turn away a guest, and you risk divine wrath. And so, when a clean, courteous, foreign nobleman knocked, you opened the door. You had to. That is the brilliance of Stoker's vampire. He didn't break social norms. He weaponized them. By wrapping monstrosity in silk and breeding, he created a predator no one could refuse. Not a monster, but a metaphor. For everything the Victorians feared. Foreigners, class mobility, moral decay behind lace curtains. At the turn of the century, England was changing. The empire was cracking at the edges, immigrants were arriving, the rich were growing nervous, and Dracula, immortal, powerful, invasive, he embodied all of it. He didn't just feed on blood. He fed on England. And no one stopped him. Because it would have been rude. We still live in the shadow of that reflex. That hesitation, that quiet, conditioned instinct to say yes when we mean no, to smile when we should run, to shake hands with the thing that we don't quite trust. Because to cause a scene would be worse than being devoured. And even now the vampire smiles. He doesn't knock anymore. He pings. He buzzes. He sends a friend request at 2 a.m. with perfect teeth and a shared interest. The threshold still exists, but it's not wood or iron anymore. It's passwords, push notifications, blue check marks, and suggestion algorithms. And just like before, the danger doesn't crash in. It asks. In the modern age, the invitation rule didn't vanish. It evolved. Every allow access, every click to accept, every app update and camera permission. It's ritual now. It's smarter bloodletting. We scroll, we tap, and the vampire doesn't have to seduce us anymore. We offer ourselves. And it doesn't drink blood. It drinks attention. Likes, views, engagement. Think about it. The vampire doesn't wait outside your door anymore. It waits on your lock screen. Right there in your inbox. On your feed. And the way that you let it isn't just with whispered yes, but with a flick of your thumb. A checkbox. A double tap. You invite it not out of ignorance, but simply out of routine. And the scariest part? Even the language has changed. Allow cookies, accept terms, grant access. All framed as choices. All dressed as invitations. And so we live surrounded by invisible doors. Not sealed with deadbolts, but with glowing buttons and friendly prompts. And behind each one, something is waiting. Corporations, algorithms, influencers, not monsters with fangs. Monsters with metrics. They don't sleep in coffins, they live in cloud servers. They don't hunt you, they track you. They feed not on blood, but on attention, and the more that you give, the stronger that they grow. And just like the old monsters, they cannot enter without consent. Only now, the consent is buried under legal jargon and dopamine triggers. Shiny red hearts, double taps, push notifications that you might like this. And we do. And that's the problem. Apps that promise intimacy, short bursts of connection, a stranger who seems to get you. And it's fine. Until one day you realize how much of yourself you've given away. Not all at once, but piece by piece. That is the genius of the modern vampire. It doesn't seduce you with mystery. It shows you yourself. Because the vampire doesn't need to break in anymore. You let it in. You invite it. And the fear? It's no longer about death. It's about disappearance. Not the loss of life, but the loss of privacy, of time, of identity. You don't feel the bite. You feel the drain. We scroll, we click, we swipe, and we empty ourselves by degrees. It's no coincidence that we talk about this in vampiric terms. Hooked, addicted, drained. Because we built a system that feeds. And only now the sustenance isn't blood. It's you. And the worst part, we still think that we're in control. But the vampire doesn't knock on wooden doors anymore. It taps on glass. Strip away the capes, the coffins, the gothic romance, forget the fangs, and forget the castles. At its core, the vampire has always been something far more intimate. Far more dangerous. It's not just a predator. It's a reflection. Of fear, of desire, of the tiny, quiet choice that we make when no one else is watching. And on that rule, the invitation has never been its weakness. It is the test, not of the vampire, of us, of who we trust, of what we ignore, of the way that we justify the unease of our gut just to avoid saying no. The invitation doesn't weaken the monster, it exposes the vulnerability of the host. Because the threat was never outside, it was inside all along. You said yes. Across every continent, every culture, every century, the vampire has changed its face, its language, its mask. But never its meaning. In the plague years, it was unquiet dead. In the Victorian drawing rooms, it was the outsider dressed better than you. And today it's in your inbox, in your feed, in the glow of the screen that you can't stop looking at. Not all monsters kick down doors. Some knock politely and wait for you to choose wrong. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Not the bite, not the blood, not even the death. It's the realization, the quiet, arching truth that you let it happen. You saw the pale face, heard the unfamiliar voice, felt the cold wind curling at your door, and you opened it anyway. Not because you were foolish, not because you were weak, because you are human. And the real vampire isn't just something waiting in the dark. It's the part of yourself that wants to say yes. The whisper that says it's probably fine. The instinct that you push down because it feels rude to close the door. Because you want to believe the best. Because doubt feels heavier than risk. That is why the vampire never disappears. Because the question it asks is timeless. Who do you trust? Who do you invite? And who do you become? Every threshold holds a choice. Every invitation is a risk. Sometimes it wears fangs, sometimes it wears a smile, and sometimes it comes through the screen. But always, it waits for you to speak. Because in the end, the story was never about the monster. It was always about us. And the terrible, fragile hope that this time maybe we will choose differently. I suppose that's what makes it all so terrifying. The realization, slow, sinking, and irreversible, that you let it in. You heard the knock. You looked through the glass, saw the pale face, the tired eyes, the softened voice, and something in you shifted, not out of fear, but empathy. And still you opened the door, not because you were naive, not because you were foolish, but because you were kind. And that is what breaks me most. You were the kind of people who believed in warmth, even when the world had gone cold. The kind of people who ask if a stranger is all right before asking what he wants. The kind who will offer a blanket and a place to sit even when your instincts whisper that something feels wrong. You didn't listen to that voice. And now, you never will again. You're still here, just feet away. The two of you curled into each other on the couch. I can still see the teacups on the table. Steam long gone, sugar still clinging to the rim. You died holding hands. Even now, drained and pale, you look peaceful. You look like people who died believing that they had done something good. And in a way, you had. You saw a man standing in the cold and you let him in. God, I wish that I could say thank you. I wish that I could tell you that it was not your fault. That I fought it. That I tried. That something stronger than me took over. But it would be a lie, wouldn't it? I knocked. I waited. And I smiled the way that I learned to smile. And when you opened the door, I stepped across the threshold, gently, gratefully, as if I deserved it. But I didn't. I don't. I've watched centuries burn down behind doors like yours. Doors opened by people who wanted to believe the best. People who thought kindness could save them. I've seen the same moment replay again and again. Different countries, different tongues, different lives. And it always ends like this. With the warmth gone. With blood cooling on the floor. And with me, sitting in the dark, wishing I was something else. Do you know what that kind of hunger feels like? Not just the thirst, not just the pain, but the knowing. The endless, arching knowledge that no matter how much you grieve the thing that you have done, you will do it again. Because the truth is, I crave it. I crave the heat of it, the pulse, the life. I crave the way that it ignites my frozen insides for a few stolen seconds. It makes me feel something close to human again. I crave the lie
lets me live while that taste still lingers on my tongue. And then it fades. The warmth leaves. The silence returns. And I am left with nothing but the echo of your heartbeat still fading in my ears. I have begged to be something else, something better. I have thrown myself into sunrises I knew wouldn't take me. I have starved for weeks, for years, hoping the hunger would wither before it consumed anyone else. But it always wins. Always. Because I am not a man. Not anymore. I am a thing that wears skin like clothing, that mimics humanity with practiced gestures and not just enough sorrow to be convincing. I don't deserve your trust. I didn't deserve your home. I don't deserve the gentleness that you had in your eyes before they went dim. You welcomed me. You didn't know who I was. You couldn't. But you invited me in all the same, and now, here we are. You still holding each other. Me sitting in the dark, with your warmth fading from my lips, and the shame thick in my chest. I wish that I could, but I don't cry anymore. I don't know if I still can. But if I could, if there was anything left inside me that deserved to mourn, you and countless others would be the ones that I would mourn for. Because you didn't deserve this. You deserved a night of peace. A quiet evening. Another sunrise, another decade, maybe two. You deserved better than me. And I will knock again. Somewhere else, some other night, in some other storm. And someone else will answer. Because someone always does. And when they do, I will smile. I will lie. And I will step across the threshold. Because I don't know how to stop.